Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. I am your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, The Juice, Dave Sadler, and we are doing a special live bonus episode here for this week's show. Of course, we're going to talk about the Ultimate Fighter Season 20 finale, which will be tomorrow, right here where I'm at in Las Vegas. The light wasn't conducive, so I couldn't show you what's behind me, but yes, I am in Las Vegas. It's not my normal home base of Detroit, Michigan. And Dave's joining me, of course, and we're going to pick the main card fights. I'll get to see him live and in person. It should be a lot of fun, and glad that we were able to join you here for a bonus edition of Beyond the Cage this week. And if you didn't already hear our live episode, it's already on YouTube, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast, where we pick this weekend's UFC on Fox card, as well as break down last weekend's UFC 181 card, and a host of headlines we go over, including the signing of CM Punk to the UFC. So, Dave, how's it going?
Good. Wish I was in Vegas.
Yeah, very interesting. My flight got delayed a few minutes, so I got here a little later than usual. And then our good friend from MMA-Freak.com, Gabe Keith, he's one of the editors there at the site, one of our affiliate sites. He actually lives in Vegas now, so he was able to pick me up from the airport and take me here to the hotel. So that was pretty cool, reaching out to some of our members of the MMA community, and he was able to get that hookup, so I didn't have to worry about taxi or anything like that, so that was pretty cool. So now checked into my room, very nice. The guy asked if I wanted a king-size bed or a two-queen. I was like, well, it's just me, so whatever gets me in there now. He's like, all right. He goes, we can get you two queens. Like, that's fine. Like, it didn't really matter to me, so very nice gentleman hooked me up, and they got a whole bunch of stuff here at the Palm, so I'm kind of glad I'm staying where the fight is at this weekend here at the Pearl at the Palm. So with that said, Dave?
Hey, did you get to go? Did you get to go down? Did Gabe take you past, up and down the strip or anything, or what?
A little bit. We went and saw a little bit of the strip because obviously you got to go past the strip to get to the Palm, so I got to see a little bit of it. And obviously it's not as cool in the daytime, or so I've been told. It's a lot cooler at night with all the lights and stuff. And as right as I got off my plane, my dad already called me and was like, hey, you seen all the sights and all that? I'm like, Dad, I literally just got off the plane. He's like, oh, okay. Like he was probably more excited than I was. So.
Right.
But really looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, it's quite the place. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's break this down.
All right. Well, based off of last Wednesday night's or yesterday night's Ultimate Fighter, the first fight of the evening, again in the female strawweight division, will be the two losers of the semifinal round on the show, and that is Randa Marcos will take on former Invicta atomweight champion Jessica Penne. Now, real quickly, Dave, since we didn't talk about the episode, we'll talk about these two individual fights that they had. They both lost, just real quickly here as an introduction. Of course, Randa Marcos took on Rose Namajunas. It kind of went as we thought. Both girls were aggressive. Both girls were going at each other. And, in a scramble from the bottom, Rose got a hold of Randa's arm and just kind of slowly working on it. I think at first Randa didn't think it was serious. And then as Randa moved into half guard, she really thought, all right, she's not going to get me with this arm bar while I'm on top and half. But Rose kept on working. It was able to get the arm free from the other arm, pull it open over, flip her over, and get the tap there to get the first round finish victory, move on to the finals. But I think it's one of those cases. That's not to say Rose is leaps and bounds ahead of Randa. I just think it was a case where maybe Randa let her guard down a little bit against a girl who really is a dangerous submission artist, and she got caught.
Yeah, Rose has kind of been known as more of a striker, so the fact that she went into this season and got 3 submissions is pretty crazy. If Randa was coming into the show and she knew a little bit about her opponents, you got to figure going into the season she probably thought that Rose was more of a striking threat than a submission threat. And then I think that's 4 submissions in a row, 3 on the show and 1 in Invicta. So, it's Rose is the real deal. Randa very much improved her stock. I think if you re-rank those girls, I think Randa makes the biggest jump, or is the biggest mover up or down.
Absolutely. She came to the house ranked 14. Obviously, right now, you got to put her in the top 4 because she made it to the top 4 of the tournament. Or, if you want to say, oh, maybe she got, easy, at least top 6. She's up there now. She moved up significantly, not just in rank, but I think in just overall ability. Because not only she had that time on the show, since then she's been training full time with our good friend Darren Cruikshank at Michigan Top Team and all the guys there in connection with Detroit Jiu-Jitsu. So I got to believe her game has gotten even better since the show.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, that was pretty much last summer. So, I mean, like you said, plenty of time to work and plenty of time to improve. So, look to see a very improved Randa come tomorrow night.
Now, she will be taking on Jessica Penne, as I mentioned, the first ever Invicta Atomweight champion. She had a heck of a fight with Carla Esparza. Not the fight I thought we were going to see, Dave. I thought we were going to see a more grinded-out affair, but we saw a very technical boxing match between these two. And despite the significant height and reach advantage that Jessica Penne had, Carla Esparza was doing a great job not only avoiding punches from Penne, but getting inside, and I thought she had that right hand all night. You could really tell that the left side of Penne's face was really effective. And for Penne, she was just a little late to the punch, maybe her speed a little slightly less than Carla. She had a pretty good left jab most of the night, as you could tell. Again, you looked at Carla's right side of her face, that eye was pretty close to swollen by the end of the 15 minutes. So she did have that technique down, but she wasn't able to land as much power combinations with her right hand as Carla was, and I didn't see her use a lot of kicks. As the taller and rangier fighter, I think that's something that would have benefited her a lot, especially against what appeared to be the faster fighter on that night, to maybe kind of slow her down a little bit. And the one thing we thought we would see would be Carla Esparza really pushing for the takedown. I mean, we saw her have some very nice power doubles, don't get me wrong, but she was not going for that as much as she has in the past. So maybe this is kind of the evolution of Carla Esparza. And yes, she won a unanimous decision, but that fight was very close with Jessica Penne. And for Jessica, it was just a little tighten up in skills. And I think one of the reasons is because she was probably thrown off guard. I guarantee if you would have said, yeah, Carla's probably going to stand with you 13 of the 15 minutes in the fight, she would have went, you're crazy. She would have never game planned for it, and I think that kind of threw her off guard. If that fight happens again, she will be ready for that eventuality or possibility.
She had more. I think Carla had more takedown attempts in the second round of the last fight than she did in the entire 15 minutes of this fight. So, yeah, I mean, definitely maybe not the evolution, but just, better game planning. Jessica she's not that far away from being in there for the title. Like you said, cleaning up will be a big deal. She can clean everything up and just continue to improve. She'll be just fine. And, like we talked about earlier, the best performance probably from just about any of these girls, probably the best performance gets you in the immediate talk for a title on any of these fights pretty much come Friday night. So, yeah, we'll see who was able to use their time on the show the best, and then who was able to also improve once they went back to their own home base.
Well, let's look at the fight between the two, Randa Marcos and Jessica Penne. I think Penne should have the stand-up advantage. Again, as we said, training with the guys at Michigan Top Team, of course, Darren Cruikshank being a very excellent striker in his own right, I guarantee he's probably imparted some of his wisdom and skills and techniques onto Randa Marcos, who, what we've seen in the show, Dave, hasn't shown a lot of stand-up skills. Definitely a girl that looks to push for the takedown and use some great jiu-jitsu. That seems to be her MO. Now, Jessica Penne, she has great jiu-jitsu off her back. So she's no stranger to being on her back. I think she's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't know if she has her black belt, but she's definitely a high-level jiu-jitsu player and has some solid stand-up as well. I think if it stays standing, I would lean towards Penne. Obviously, she's going to have a little slight height and reach advantage. But grappling-wise, I think it's pretty even. I think it's more even than a lot of people think. They're going to probably think, oh, it's Jessica Penne on the ground. But I think it's actually really even. And I think if it goes to the ground, it's anyone's fight. Standing up, we still haven't seen enough of Randa yet in the stand-up department for me to really say that her stand-up's really good and she can be an elite-level stand-up fighter at this weight class. But it should be a fun fight, and I think it's going to be a good fight to kick off this finale card.
Yeah, A couple things that I take away. I know she's fighting Jessica Penne. This is a big fight for both of these ladies. Main card, UFC, Las Vegas. The eyes are on the weight division for the very first time. And this is the first big time fight for Randa Marcos, in front of the bright lights, on cable TV, all that kind of stuff. Before she came in the house, she was 4-1, and the biggest show that she fought on was RFA. RFA, she lost to Justine Quiche, who was on the show. And I mean, it doesn't mean that her skill set isn't there, but this is definitely the first time that she's going to be, under the real bright lights. And we've seen it happen to numerous people. They do great at RFA and these other shows, and then they get there and they kind of freeze. So kind of be on the lookout for that. And remember, Jessica Penne is she's a Invicta champion, and she's been under the brighter lights for a little bit longer. So in the terms of comfort and all that kind of stuff, Jessica may have an advantage there, and the skill sets might not be as important of a deal as some of the some of the immeasurables. Maybe, is that a good word?
I like it.
I just made it up.
Well, let's get to the next fight of the evening at 155 pounds, as Yancy Medeiros will take on Joe Proctor. Looking at Yancy Medeiros, 6 of his 10 career victories are by knockout. So far in the UFC, he has won just 1 fight to 2 losses, and he also has a no contest on his record. His last fight finally got a win in the UFC after 3 attempts, as he defeated Damon Jackson at UFC 171. And he is a young kid out of Hawaii that a lot of people are talking about, 27 years old. Definitely you could call one of the rising prospects here in this division, as he takes on Joe Proctor, who is a former contestant of the Ultimate Fighter Season 15. He has 10 career victories as well. Actually, these guys have the same record at 10-2. Of his 10 career victories, he has 4 submission victories to his credit, from the man from Massachusetts. In his last fight, he defeated Justin Salas, knocking him out in the 2nd round. So far in the UFC, 3-1, and that fight against Salas makes 2-0 so far here in 2014. There was a big layoff between his second fight in the UFC and then his return fight earlier this year against Cristiano Marcelo. And since his return, Dave, Joe Proctor has looked very good. He's had very crisp boxing, very good takedown defense, and he has showed a lot of power. And I expect his fight to be a stand-up fight against Medeiros, and to me, really the difference between these two is who's going to be able to avoid punches from the other. That's really what it's going to be, because Medeiros is a very explosive individual, maybe a little more power. He's going to use more kicks. He's going to be a little more wild, which could be a good thing or could be a bad thing, whereas Joe Proctor is going to be a little more, straight down the middle with his combinations, a little more technical, a little more methodical. But it should be a fun fight, and I really think it's a pick'em fight. I'm not sure who's favored. I would probably say Proctor's favored. He probably has a little better all-around game, but this is a good fight and a great addition to the card.
What do you mean you don't know the odds? You're in Vegas, for crying out loud. Walk downstairs.
I will know the odds pretty soon. I think I'm going to put some money on some of these, just because I can. So I'll find out sooner or later.
That is ridiculous, folks, that Jim doesn't know the odds, and he's literally 100 feet from the book.
Okay, did you realize that like 30 minutes ago I was still 36,000 miles in the air?
36,000 miles? That's so high. That's like space.
I know.
You were like in space.
Yeah, pretty much.
You should have went straight to the book, just gave him your credit card, and then just got out of there.
They take my money now.
No, you got to remember, too, with this fight that, like you said about Medeiros, job could be on the line for this guy. So do we see the wild punches coming from him, or do we see a more methodical approach? I don't know. But like you said, Joe Proctor's improved greatly, and he's starting to make a little bit of a run. But, sometimes it's the intangibles, like the fact that you could be out of a job if you don't win this fight for Yancy Medeiros. That could play big into this fight, and that could definitely change both guys' game plans.
Well, the next fight of the evening will also be at 155 pounds, as our good friend, the Detroit superstar Darren Cruikshank, will take on KJ Noons. Looking at this fight, Dave, of course, Darren is coming into this fifth fight already for 2014, and so far, just in 2014, he has gone 3-1 overall in his UFC career. He has 6 victories to just 3 losses. His last 16 career victories with 9 knockouts. He's taking on the former pro boxer and Strikeforce fighter KJ Noons. 13 wins, 9 of them are by knockout. So far, since coming over to the UFC from Strikeforce, he has a record of 2-1, winning 2 fights in a row, and he had a very impressive victory in his last fight, knocking out Sam Stout in just 30 seconds back in April at the Tough Nations finale. And really, to me, the X factor in this fight, Dave, is if Darren wants to use his wrestling, which is something that he really showcased in his last fight against Anthony Nakajawani, another very good striker. Striking-wise, KJ has the better hands, maybe slightly more power, but we know Darren has some of the best kicks in the division and definitely will have the advantage in that category. And we're really going to see kind of, a kickboxer, taekwondo stylist, if you will, versus a boxer. And I think we're going to see a very fun fight. But like I said, the X factor is the wrestling. KJ Noons does have good takedown defense, but guys have been able to get him on the ground and hold him there, and he doesn't really have submissions off his back. He's good at not taking damage from the guard, but it's not like he's going to submit you or anything. So that's going to be the X factor to the fight, but both these guys are very exciting, and definitely another, I think, out of all the 3 non-cast member fights, I probably was looking forward to this one the most.
Yeah, hey, I went ahead and found the odds, if you're curious.
Roll them out. At least for the main card here.
Yeah, they're not the Proctor Medeiros. The Proctor's the underdog in all of them.
Really? I find that interesting. Maybe they know something I don't.
Yeah.
By a lot though, or is it close?
On Bodog, he's a plus 200, and Medeiros is a minus 260.
Wow, I thought it would be more closer, somewhere like 220, 225.
Yeah, Cruikshank is the favorite on all the sites by not a huge margin. And they're saying Stevens and Oliveira is they're all over the place. Some have favorite and underdog, so that's a pick 'em. So, no, but I'm excited for the Noons and Cruikshank, definitely. It should be a good fight. What does Darren want to do in this fight? He's been pretty successful however he wants to go in any of his fights thus far, and this is another one of those victories. You beat a guy like KJ Noons. Might not be the highest ranked guy ever, but it's a name. It's another name to cross off on your list of guys that you beat, and then you can come back and start 2015 out with a bang as well.
Right, and just to mention, if he wins, he'll go 4-1 in 2014.
Yeah, that's impressive, but Neil Magny went 5-0.
I know. I'm just saying, first of all, fighting 5 times for the UFC, I feel like is an accomplishment in this day and age. And for him to then go 4-1, I don't care who you're taking on. You're taking on somebody. You're taking on 5 tough guys.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
And that was his. I mean, his goal was to fight 5 times and win 5 times. Obviously, he's going to fall, 1 win short of that. But he's, we'll try to get him on here after the fight. But I guarantee, if you told him like, all right, you went 4-1 though, he'd be like, yeah, that's still pretty good,
Right.
Let's get to the co-main events of the evening in the featherweight division, as Little Heathen Jeremy Stephens will take on Charles Oliveira. Looking at Jeremy Stephens, 23 career victories, has 15 knockouts from that. So far, since dropping down to 145 pounds, he is 3-1, His last fight was a loss to Cub Swanson back in June of this year, and has looked really good since not only moving to Alliance out there in San Diego, but dropping down 10 pounds from 155 to 145. Much like Mr. Charles Oliveira, who used to fight at 155, he dropped down to 145. Since then, he has gone 2-2 in the division. Overall, in the UFC, has quite a few victories. He's been fighting in the UFC since 2010. 6 victories to 4 losses. He also has no contest in there. 2-fight winning streak for Oliveira right now. His last fight was a submission victory over Hatsu Hioki back in June at the Fight Night in New Zealand. And of his 18 career victories, 11 submissions. Well, this fight, like you said, Dave, all over the place in terms of odds, and with good reason, because you have Jeremy Stephens, who's one of the best knockout artists at 145 pounds with his power. Then you have arguably the best submission artist at 145 pounds with Charles Oliveira. So if it stays standing, it's Jeremy Stephens. If it goes to the ground, it's Charles Oliveira. It's really that simple, and that's why the odds are so many different places. Now, in the Darren Elkins fight for Jeremy Stephens, he did a great job of shutting down Darren Elkins, who's a very good takedown artist. Now, Oliveira doesn't have that level of wrestling, but Oliveira is the type of guy that will drop guard. And we've seen Stephens, more so at 55 than 45, have trouble with guys that are tricky with submissions. I mean, look at his fight against Joe Lazone. He had very trouble on the ground with Joe Lazone, and I would say Charles Oliveira is probably even a better submission guy than Joe Lazone. So it begs the question that if Oliveira can get it to the ground, he doesn't have to do it traditionally, which I think is probably what he's going to have to do. I think if he can grab a hold of Stephens, I would say drop guard, because I think if you try a traditional takedown, it doesn't look like you probably are going to be able to get that. And with Stephens' power, he's not quite Travis Brown, with the elbows and stuff, but that's something you got to look out for if you're Oliveira and you try your traditional double legs and single legs.
Yeah, I was looking on Sherdog here at everybody that Stephens has fought. This guy's fought everybody, man.
He's been around for a very long time, and I think, what is he, 28?
He is 28.
10. Yeah, and he's fought in the UFC since like 2008 or something like that.
2007.
Yeah, 2007. So I was a year off, but yeah, that's a long time.
Cole Miller, Spencer Fisher, Dos Anjos, Lozon, Tebow, Sam Stout, Melvin Gillard, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Eve Edwards, Darren Elkins, Cub Swanson. This guy's all over the place.
He's fought a who's who of 55 and 45.
Yeah. No, Stephens is a warrior. Oliveira's on his way. He's also on his way up. I never understood why they did the Cub Swanson and the Frankie Edgar fight for Charles Oliveira. I know he started out well, but then they gave him Cub Swanson, and right after that they gave him Frankie Edgar. And those were 2 losses, but now he started to build back up. He beat Andy Ogle and Hatsu Hioki, which puts him on a 2-fight winning streak. And I wish they would have brought him along a little bit slower than what they did. Oliveira's a guy, like you said, if it goes to the ground, it's definitely his fight. But Oliveira's tricky, and he's real tricky for anybody in that division. Yeah, he's got a chance to get knocked out by Stephens, but that could happen in any fight. I think his skills on the ground are crazy good, and to me this is much like the odds say, this is a pick'em fight.
The main event of the evening, Carla Esparza against Rose Namajunas for the first ever UFC Women's Strawweight Championship. History will be made tomorrow night here in Las Vegas, and they get who I think a lot of people had in this very spot, Dave, the finals here. Carla Esparza, the former Invicta 115-pound champion. Rose Namajunas, I think a lot of people, I think you and I definitely said that she's a dark horse for the competition, 2-1 coming into this competition, but ranked 7 coming in. Definitely, as you said, I believe Esparza was favored for this matchup, and she should be favored for this matchup. She's fought longer, she's fought better competition, and she's came in and before Invicta had their long break and they signed all these fighters, she was the number 1 150-pound fighter in the world. So she should be favored. But one thing Rose has done and has really flourished here so far over her 3 fights on The Ultimate Fighter is her pace and aggressive nature, the ability to get in her opponent's face and really throw their rhythm off. And that was really apparent in the Joanne Calderwood fight. I think she really messed with JoJo's rhythm and flow, and that could very much happen here against Carla Esparza. Now, Carla probably will be able to take her down. I don't see that being a problem, but when it gets to the ground, how well will Carla do with Rose constantly moving, constantly throwing up legs, arm bars, chokes? I mean, she's not sitting still on the ground. She's looking to do something to you, and she's not going to sit still. And some other girls Carla has been able to control, but it's going to be tough to control Rose Namajunas. And that's kind of where I see the battle, the most of the battle being this fight, is what can Rose do off her back when she does get there? Can she be successful, or will she get stifled by the wrestling of Esparza? And that's to me, where this fight, where the winner will be made, is in that battle.
I would agree with that, Jim. Let me ask you this: a couple of questions. Have we? Rose is currently 2-1. With all 3 fights coming from Invicta. Is it ridiculous to you that we could have a champion with less than 5 professional fights?
Yes, that would be Brock Lesnar territory.
How many fights did he have? 3?
3.
Yeah.
Because he had that one against that random dude in Japan, then he lost to Frank Mir, then he beat Heath Herring, and then he fought Randy Couture right afterwards. So he was 3-1 when he won the title, which would be the case here with Namajunas if she won.
Do you care as a fan? I mean, as a fan of the sport, do you care that the patriarch of the division is so new?
Not really, because it's literally a brand new division. It's not like a girl who was 2-1 that they signed and then she just got a title shot. I mean, right. If you really want to look at her record, she's technically 5-1 because she won 3 times on the show.
Right.
Fights don't count. So, I think she's earned it. It's not on paper, to the casual fans who didn't watch the show and really haven't been maybe even paying attention to female MMA. They go, man, they're champions 3-1. That's weird. That might throw them off, maybe for future billing. But I think to the people who actually know the sport and have been following the show, it's not. I don't think it's that big a deal. Because if she goes in and beats Carla Esparza, regardless whether it was for a UFC title or an Invicta title, I feel like that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. This has to be the best possible matchup, you would imagine, for the UFC.
If you looked at what final matchups that would be good for the UFC to promote, yeah, it was not only with her aggressive nature, she's a good-looking girl, she has the connection to a former UFC fighter and her fiance in Pat Barry. You got that whole thing, number 7 seed, only 1 from Melendez, a lot going for her. Then you got Carla Esparza, the number 1 fighter in the world coming into this competition. She dominated with 3 straight victories. She was dominant in Invicta, and I think out of all the scenarios you could look at possible finals, I think this is one of the ones that the UFC probably hoped for.
I got 2 more. Do you think Rose is the one that Dana was talking about? The next Ronda Rousey-ish?
I think she has a very similar style to Ronda in terms of being aggressive, setting up submissions and getting her in opponent's face. Attitude, maybe slightly different. She had a lot more of a tragic backstory than Ronda did, and a little different attitude, but they're not completely different fighters. But yeah, there's some very similar status in terms of their fight, and I could see Dana White saying that Rose is a Ronda Rousey type.
And did you get a chance? Do you watch Tough Talk?
I didn't get a chance to watch the after special last night. I went directly to bed so I could get up and get on an airplane this morning. Otherwise, I would have, but I did not watch it last night.
Worst idea ever.
Yeah, it seemed. That's one of the reasons why I haven't been tuning in.
It's on YouTube if you want to relax before you go into the casino or whatever. It's on YouTube. It's like 7 minutes, and it's just like I don't know. They have all those things that they could do with those fighters, like leading up to it, and that's what they, that's what they focus on. Is like the catty girl stuff from in the house, like just not what I would have focused on. That's all.
Well, with that said, Dave, let's get to some picks. First fight of the evening, 115 pounds for the female strawweight division. Randa Marcos against Jessica Penne. Probably picking a little more with my heart here than maybe the numbers indicate, but I just got a feeling here. I'm going to go with Randa Marcos in this one.
I'm going to go with Jessica.
All right, the next fight of the evening at 155 pounds, Yancy Medeiros against Joe Proctor. I really think this is going to be a fun fight. I think this fight, we've mentioned all the fights are good, but this one could steal the show. With not a lot of big names and stuff, I think they could steal the show. And like you said, at least for Medeiros, maybe something on the line, because if he loses, he'll then be only 1 win out of 5 fights for the UFC. That might not keep him around any longer. So should be a fun fight, but I'm going to go with Joe Proctor in this one. I think his technical boxing skills will win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely go with Joe Proctor as well.
The next fight of the evening, Darren Cruikshank against KJ Noons. I think Darren's only been on 1 or 2 main cards since we done the show, Dave, and we obviously good friends with him and not going to pick against him. I do like KJ Noons. I've actually been a fan of KJ Noons for a very long time, going back to when he fought in the Elite XC, if anyone remembers that organization. So I really do like KJ Noons, but I got to go with my boy Darren Cruikshank.
Yeah, I will take the Detroit Superstar as well.
Co-main events of the evening at 145 pounds, Jeremy Stephens against Charles Oliveira. I really want to pick Charles Oliveira, Dave. I really do. But I think Jeremy Stephens, with his takedown defense, will be able to stop the submission game, stop it dead in his tracks, and he can use his superior stand-up skills. So give me the man from Iowa and Little Heathen, Jeremy Stephens.
I'm going to take Du Bronx, Charles Oliveira, via submission.
Let's get to the main events of the evening. Carla Esparza against Rose Namajunas for the first ever UFC strawweight championship title for the female division. My pick, when we did picks, Dave, at the very beginning of the show when the cast was announced, I said Carla Esparza was going to win the show and win the competition. So I'm not going to change that now, so I'm going to stick with my pick and take Carla Esparza to win the whole thing and become the first strawweight champion.
Like I told you, Rose was going to win from the beginning. Didn't I say that?
You said Tisha.
I meant Rose.
I think you had Rose as your dark horse, so you get half credit.
I think Tisha's middle name is Rose. I was confused.
So you're taking Rose then?
I will take Rose. Hey, Jim, as you do our outro, would it be okay if I played music to make it even better?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Cue it up. Alright, he is the Juice, Dave Sadler. You can follow him on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. Anything to add other than cult of personality?
No, it's on everything. So I just anytime that anybody talks about him on a radio show or whatever, they play it. So had to throw it out there. If you see CM Punk, tell him what's up.
All right, if I see him, I'll definitely try to get a picture with him. So again, I'm Jim Grant. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
No, you're at the Pearl at the Palms, man. You're pretty close to the Tough Gym. Should just start walking around the street. Just walk over to the Tough Gym. They're not recording there.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to. I got to get some food first. I've been up since 4:30, so I have not ate yet. So I'm gonna get some food and then figure out what I'm gonna do with the rest of my day. But thanks for everybody joining us and watching on replay. We appreciate it. And once again, as I said, he's Dave Sadler. I'm Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And thank you for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.